Brewmaster is getting a nice little rework for patch 10.0.5, and I couldn't be more excited. In this video, I want to take just a few minutes to go over the changes and the perceived reasons why these changes are being introduced. At the start of Dragonflight, Brewmaster Monk was on the receiving end of one of the largest nerf bat beatdowns any tank has seen. But Blizzard has been building the class back up, implementing changes that benefit the class's self-healing and survivability, and more importantly, not nerfing their specialty, which is just their insane amount of damage that they're able to deal. Let's not waste any time and dive right in. Just this last week, we saw Blizzard buff the Brewmaster Stagger, adding additional value to the Stagger's magical resistance, which was definitely needed. And alongside this, the cooldown of Celestial Brew was reduced by a whopping 25%. This has now given Brewmaster much more stable healing and reduced damage intake, which is allowing them to become much more aggressive with the damage that they're able to deal, which only plays into their strength. Coming this next week, Brewmaster is getting a handful of major changes. The first and major change we are going to see is a rework to their talent tree. While nothing is changing in the class tree, Blizzard is removing several 2-point nodes from the spec tree, which will reward Brewmaster players with one additional point to use in their first tier of their spec tree. These reductions from the 2-point nodes include Graceful Exit, Staggering Strikes, Gift of the Ox, and Quick Sip. Because of these changes, this means you're now going to have access to either Healing Elixir, Staggering Strike, or Quick Sip, which, like already mentioned, gives us one free point to use. Healing Elixir will give the Brewmaster player an instant off-the-global heal, which can actually be pretty potent in certain situations. On the other hand, Staggering Strikes and or Quick Sip make for a much more passive stagger reduction playstyle. While not as noticeable, they definitely can hold their own when paired with the recent changes to the effectiveness of stagger. Another major change is a new talent node called Spirit of the Ox, which is granting Brewmasters a little bit more control over their previously RNG healing sphere generation. This talent node most likely will be played as like a base talent in all builds, and causes your Blackout Kick and Rising Sun Kick to have a chance to generate a healing sphere. One major complaint about Brewmasters previously was the inconsistency of healing spear spawns accompanied with how Rising Sun Kick, while powerful, was pretty useless for defensive value. Players who weren't a fan of Rising Sun Kick should now feel a little bit better about actually hitting it. And then the last thing that is being changed for the Brewmaster Monk is some damage modifiers. Notably, our Resonant Fist damage is being nerfed by 45%. And while this does seem massive, there weren't many players who were a fan of having the majority of your damage come from a passive talent option. What Blizzard is doing instead is buffing all of our other abilities, which includes a 10% Keg Smash damage increase, another 20% damage increase to Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick, and then an additional 25% damage increase to Breath of Fire. Essentially what this does is it shifts the damage away from Resonant Fists, while not hurting what Brewmasters do so well, which is Big Damn. Like any class, buffs sometimes opens up new playstyles, or in this case, talent options. With the buff to Spinning Crane Kick, we may actually see a rise in popularity with the Charred Passions talent. This talent node actually competes with Dragonfire Brew, which has been the favored choice so far throughout this first season. While Charred Passions could always pull ahead of Dragonfire Brew was just reliable and it dropped that extra step in your DPS priority. Players who still enjoy Dragonfire Brew can definitely still see good results from the Breath of Fire buffs, but Charred Passions might just be the option for those willing to min-max the rotation and buff management. Another option that I think can definitely see some play going forward is Blackout Combo. This talent is fairly ignored, but I think it opens up a lot of talent tree options for those willing to learn it. Blackout Combo causes your Blackout Kick to empower your next ability, including Keg Smash, Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire, Purifying Brew, and Celestial Brew. I'm not going to get into the very nitty-gritty specifics here, but the Breath of Fire combo causes your damage over time to be amplified by an additional 50%, and it adds an additional 5% damage reduction to the dot. You can then extend this effect through Charred Passions, resulting in a little bit more higher damage and a less damage taken. These two talents are actually something that I prefer playing on live servers already, but I'm excited to see my preferred playstyle being bolstered here in the next few days. So what does this mean for Brewmaster going forward? Well, they are becoming increasingly sturdy. Their ability to mitigate and prevent damage accompanied with their ever-increasing self-healing makes them insanely reliable tanks. When you pair these things with their insane damage, they start to become an unstoppable force in Mythic Plus. As some of you might know, I've been spending the last 2 weeks swapping back to my Brewmaster monk, and I've been loving every second of it. Going forward, most likely for the rest of the season, I will be spending more time, or at least most of my time, pushing as Brewmaster in Mythic Plus, and these changes only make me more excited for the class. In future weeks, I'll be doing a lot more different commentaries and guides around the Brewmaster monk, so if that's something that interests you, feel free to hit that subscribe button. And lastly, of course, massive shout out to all my Patreon supporters who allow me to do this. Without them, there'd be much less of these. So, thank you guys. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.